What is going on, Comic Fam? It's your boy, the Bearded Comic Bro, and I am joined by comic creator Tyler Boss. Welcome to the show.
Greg, thanks for having me.
I am excited to talk to you. I also don't know why it's taken me this long to reach out to you because you were one of the creators of Four Kids Walk Into the Bank. What's the farthest place from here? And you now have a new series out from, is it Dark Horse, right? No,
Image.
Image. You will do bad things. And I read this and I said, I have to talk to Tyler. Holy cow. So good. But before we hop into that, I always like to ask, have you always enjoyed comics? Like growing up, did you read comics or is this kind of newer thing for you later in life?
Oh yeah, no, I'm a lifelonger. I've been infected with the disease since for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, what was kind of
Um,
like, what was your gateway into comics then?
I read like newspaper strips growing up was honestly like the first thing that I started reading. I remember for my first communion, my uncle Jack, he got me a collection of Calvin and Hobbes of the like all those things. And I remember being annoyed because like everybody else got me money and he got me a book and I was like, I don't need this. And then it ended up being one of my favorite books ever. Like I still have it. It's got a nice note from him and just being a crap. How old are you when you do that? Like third grade or
Right.
something? Just like
You
a
also didn't
petulant
realize
7 year
how
old.
great of a gift that actually was. You're like, man,
Oh
my
yeah.
Uncle Jack was actually cooler than everyone else.
100%. But yeah, so I started there and then watched a lot of like Saturday morning cartoons. So I had like the Spider-Man cartoon, X-Men, and Batman, the animated series. And then, at least where I grew up, I live in Buffalo, grew up in Buffalo. There wasn't any local shops in my immediate vicinity. So a lot of my early comics, like proper, was my grandmother going to like garage sales and flea markets, and she'd get me just like she didn't know what she was picking up. She'd just be like, "Oh, that one's got Nightwing and Batman. I think he likes those." And so it'd just be like random issues in the middle of arcs.
Yeah.
So it was always just like me rereading um, over and over, like part two exclusively of like a three-part story and trying to make up what came before and what would the resolution be. And there's a couple funny ones in that though, where I was like going through. I have them all still, and I was like going through, and I was like, "Oh, I have like." A world's finest Art Adams. That's like a one-off story. That's like all these different artists and stuff. You're like, oh, that's crazy that like I just had these,
Right.
in my without even realizing until years later, like who the artists and writers were. There was like, oh, I'm big fans of these people.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny of like you mentioned that the kind of the one off of like you're like, oh, I'll read issue two of a 5-part series. You don't know what happened before. You don't know what because I picked up all my books from Half Price Bookstore, like a
Yeah,
secondhand bookstore, and I was like, I like Batman, so I'm reading. And now as a comic reader, I'd be so frustrated like that, but that's how I read comics as a kid.
no, I know that's what we grew up doing, right? And it's a funny thing because I feel like that is what gets us kind of like the brain churning a bit, right? Where you could do this, where it's like you're making up stories, right? Like you're being given almost like a prompt from the like books. You're like, okay, so like I gotta now, how do we get this to a resolution or whatever? And yeah, I don't know. It's I kind of really love that I didn't have that, or I don't know. There's like I have a
Yeah.
weird love of that.
Well, do you think then that kind of like creating the stories in your head kind of led you kind of open the door a little bit to say like I want to try my hand at creating comics?
Yeah, I mean it's I always drew, so it's like I first came at this as like an artist, right? And so like the idea of telling my own stories and that things like the idea of being a quote unquote like writer mystified me for so long. I'm like, how do you quantify that as a like when I sit down to draw, it's like, okay, I got a blank piece of paper. When I'm, finished with it, there's a thing to look at. It's like a joke I used to say to like Matthew Rosenberg, who I work with a lot, where I'm always like, it's why writers always make those innocuous tweets of like exciting news coming or this whatever. It's like, well, yeah, they got nothing else to show. They can't like hold up a script page or something.
Right.
But so in working with Matt and sort of coming up with Four Kids and For This Place and that stuff, as we would just be sitting in a room talking out like what the story could be, what these are. He's like, "That's writing. That's what you're doing. This is right." So I was like, "Oh, that's what I was doing all those years ago. We were making up the story even then." It's like, "Oh yeah, you're writing. Like that's what it is." So many different creators too. I know come at comics from being part of like the fanfic world, right? Where it's like they're on online message boards doing fanfic for this thing, and like that's a totally great way to start to like teach yourself how to like craft a story and,
Yeah.
do that sort of stuff.
Is that one of the I've noticed in a lot of comics, especially when it's with you and Matthew, of that you usually aren't listed as writer, artist. It's usually, created by or
Mhm.
storytellers of. Is that purposeful from that idea of your art is part of the writing?
Yeah, I think, and it's also me and Matt have such a holistic sort of true collaboration where
Yeah.
it's like, he should get credit for some of the covers and stuff because he'll concept those. Like he won't draw them or anything, but like he has, he can't draw at all. He's trying like he's truly fucking terrible at it. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
You're
swear.
fine. No, you're fine. It's fine. Yep.
But he he is a visual thinker. Like he really, and so it's like, for instance, the issue to Four Kids Walk Into a Bank #3. It's four kids lined up against the wall, really small, and then it's like a big wall with the title at the top. Like that was his concept, where he was like, I kind of think that, and so it's in the same way where it's like, let me think of. It's hard for me to think of an exact example where it's like there's like jokes in Four Kids that like are jokes I wrote, but people ascribe them to Matt because they think it's the writer, and there's things where they ascribe credit to me where it really should be. So it's for me and him, it's a thing where it's like it's not about counting ideas or whatever. It's just
Yeah.
like no, it's yes, he writes a full script and yes, I draw it, but the creation of it is more than just what you see. Like everything is just a back and forth conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I love that because it does feel like a true collaboration, right? Like that it's not like there's no hierarchy of, writer or art. It's like no, this is a meshing together and like and you can I think you get that sense reading those comics as well. Like that it feels like it's very fluid that you all are working together closely to have that effect.
Oh, so I appreciate well, that's our hope, but I never know if it comes through. So
I think so. So it does.
okay,
So
thank
good.
you, Greg.
I don't
Thanks.
know how much that whether my opinion matters, but it does. So
No, no, I mean, hey, you're a reader.
so where you said you kind of always like to draw and start to create, where was it for you that you were like, I want to try my hand at stepping into creating comics?
It's again like I feel like such a jerk because it is hubris, right? Where I
Yeah.
remember being like in high school and I was reading Ed McGuinness and Jeff Loeb's Batman and Superman. Like my high school art teacher just had tons of comics in the room, and I had sort of in my early teenage years fell out of reading comics because I was like trying to impress a girl who was it worked out. She's my wife, but she's also a big comic fan. So it turns out I didn't need to stop reading comics.
You're like, oh, I
Um,
messed that one up, but I fixed
uh,
it. So it worked.
yeah, but then I mean the real funny thing is, and I'll sorry, this is going to be a weird tangent to get
Go
there.
for
Was
it.
like the comic that got me back into reading comics regularly was Gotham City Central by Ed Brubaker, Greg Rucka, and Michael Lark. And then my first professional gig working in comics was being Michael Lark's background inker on Lazarus. So it was like this weird sort of like closed loop of like the thing that got me back in ended up being the first job that like led to whatever.
Yeah.
But sitting in my being what like 15 in my I'll give him a shout out, David Carlson, my high school art teacher's class, reading those Ed McGuinness and Jeff Loeb comics. I was like, oh, I think I could do this. Which is such a like, I mean, they're masters of the craft, and like as a 15-year-old, like, oh, I think I could do this. It's such a preposterous thing, but yeah, I mean, I really should give credit to those guys.
Yeah, well, you weren't wrong, and it's fine. I don't have very many omnibuses, but I do have Gotham Central on that shelf because
Nice.
it's such a good,
Yeah,
such a
yeah,
good.
that's amazing.
So, like, once you were like, okay, I want to do this, I want to start to. What was it like for like, where did that start to get things published and kind of get into that?
Sure. Yeah. So I went to the School of Visual Arts in New York City. Studied under Klaus Janson and Gary Panner and David Sandlin and Nick Bertozzi. And the reason why I went there is David Mazzucchelli of Batman Year One. He was like, it was Year One was one of my favorite. Like that was when I got back into comics with GCPD. I immediately was reading Year One, obsessed with that. And then in 2009, David's book Asterios Polyp came out, and so I was getting these two versions of David's career where it was you have your superhero, the sort of more traditional when people think comics, they assume superhero, and then Asterios Polyp, where it's like, no, this can be, as affecting as outside of genre constraints as a movie or a novel or whatever, like a pure distillation of the idea of like a graphic novel. Like I feel like that's maybe the best if you want to ascribe that term to something. I think that's the best version of it. But so going to school there, I was also working at a comic shop called Forbidden Planet, where is how I met Rosenberg. We both worked there, and weirdly enough, I ended up moving into an apartment like a block and a half away from where he lived without ever knowing, like just sort of weird happenstance stuff. Um, but yeah, in professionally, so it's the reason I bring all that up is my senior year at SVA, you have to do a thesis project, and I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do, and me and Matt were batting around all these ideas constantly, and the idea we settled on was ended up being the first issue of Four Kids Walk Into a Bank. So my senior project for that, and the joke we always say too is that like since Mazzucchelli was my thesis advisor, it's that it's edited by him. And then I say that to him, and he says, "Please don't say that to people." The yeah, so it was funny. We did that, and at the same time, there was a open call on Tumblr for to date myself for Michael Lark looking for a background inker, and Danny Lore, who I worked with at Forbidden Planet 2. They were an avid Tumblr user and saw it, and were like, "You should try out for this," and I did. And I got it, and so it was like that, and then I didn't. Four Kids didn't have a publisher right out of school. It was probably like a year or two before Black Mass picked it up, and then from there we kind of went. There was bumps. There has been times where, for instance, when the COVID pandemic shut down, like I had a book deal at Dark Horse that had to be tabled for a while, so I like left and went and was a graphic designer for 2 years, and so yeah, it's not been a straight path, but
Right.
it's been a winding road.
Yeah. So how do you have like different artists that kind of inspired you as a artist that kind of helped shaped your style?
Yeah, I mean, Mazzucchelli is always sort of at the top of that
Okay.
pyramid because it is where you see in him so fluid. You follow his work from Born Again to Asterios Pull Up. I think the only thing, it's funny, his hands, the way he draws hands is consistent across
Mm.
every single one of them. Like there's a specific shot in year one, I remember, where Bruce is gripping the steering wheel, and the way he draws hands there is the same he draws it in like Rubber Blankets or City of Glass. Or so there's funny little consistencies like that. But when I was going to SVA, I was still a big superhero reader, so I was really into like Jim Lee and Frank Quietly and Mazzucchelli, obviously. I also was like weirdly super into Tony Daniel, which is not a thing you'll see in my work at all, but I was just like a big Batman reader at the time, and
Yeah.
that's what was coming out. And then in school, I met a friend who sort of really started to open me up to a lot of the more alternative comics. So Charles Burns and Chris Ware. Chris Ware is a big one, but really Adrian Tomine and Dan Klaus really became the like
Mm.
uh my favorite stuff, where it's a weird mix of like
Yeah.
superhero comics and then also like the 90s and late 2000s alternative comics from like Fantagraphics and Drawn and Quarterly, and now I mean like I working in a comic shop and just being such a fan, like I've read, I feel like, most of the Western canon, and so now I'm finally entering my I keep calling it my late stage weebdom, so I'm just reading an insane amount of manga, and like I think that starts to come through in the work. I think I screw myself a little bit because I get so interested in so many different varieties or just everything that you can do with comics
Mhm.
that I don't stay in my lane. So it's like if you go and you read What's the Furthest Place from Here, issue one looks so different from issue 23 or 22, whatever one we're on now, and it's like it's a direct line of like, well, yeah, I've been working on this since basically 2018 on and off,
Right.
and then also just like so you grow as an artist, but also your influences ebb and flow and change. I feel very thankful for artists like Hayden Sherman, who I feel like Hayden changes their art based on the story, and it's a thing where it's like, all right, if people, I mean,
Yes.
obviously Hayden's incredible, but Hayden changing it from absolute Wonder Woman to Batman Dark Patterns to
To what Thumbs
the few,
was. I mean,
yeah, I said, yeah,
completely different
yeah,
styles.
yeah.
So
Um,
yeah, that makes complete sense. Like you said, if people follow along with their work when it can shift like that, you would make sense. Like where, like you said, you with Matthew, you've always been doing like the kind of the art, but you're also like collaborating on writing aspect. You'll do bad things is you writing here.
mhm.
Is this your first solo writing, like credited, or was there something else that I missed before that?
There's like little, like I do write for this place with Matt, so like we did some guest artist issues where I wrote full scripts for
Okay.
artists, but that's like that's a little different because it is a thing where it's like I'm in mine and Matt's sandbox, and
Right.
like we're telling specifically or specific sort of one-off stories. So it's a little easier. There's a little bit of a pressure off there where it's like, the characterization, you kind of have the format, you have the world. And I've done little things like that. But yeah, You'll Do Bad Things is the first time I've written for an artist in a like extended or in a larger scope, right? Like it's going to
Yep.
be probably around like 200 pages total, like a full story. And luckily, it's an interesting thing. I learned immediately, sort of in the process of working with Adriano Tortulici, who is the artist on the book. He, I reached out to him, and was coming off a really negative experience with a former publisher where he had drawn like two full issues of a book, and then his editor got canned, and so the book was dead, and he couldn't reclaim the pages or show them or do anything. So it's just like, I
Oh,
have 45 pages of this thing I drawn, and I can't do anything with it. So a lot of like our early relationship was me building trust with him. And
yeah.
so in doing that, I wrote him what I thought would be like a really easy page. Like I was like, it's 4 panels wide. It's a shot from high above of a car. And you're just going to repeat that car for all 4 panels. The only thing that's going to change is you're going to slowly have blood pool out from the bottom of the car like an oil spill. I was like, it's an easy day for you. Like I'll do that for you. I'll give you like it's a good storytelling page, easy, whatever.
Yeah.
Adriano completely changed it. And it was a thing where he's like, nope, like we're behind the car, and then this dude's gonna kick the door open, and then we're gonna lower the camera, and the blood's gonna pool, and then we're gonna push in on this. And it was a thing where it was like learning immediately, where it's like, sort of with Adriano specifically, like I need to give him the room to like do what he
Yeah.
wants to do, and like he doesn't need stage direction all the time. There's times where it's useful. There's times where it's like I've gone full Marvel style with him, where I'm like, this is what needs to happen over the course of these pages, but I'm not going to give you page or panel breakdowns, and I'll letter it after the fact. Well, Hassan will letter it, but I'll come up with what needs to be lettered.
Right.
But it's interesting working with an artist where it is a thing like my sensibilities are sometimes to be quieter or to be more reserved in what we show. And Adriano, a lot of the time he wants to go bigger or loud. First issue of Bad Things, we have a scene that I wrote to be like in a school auditorium of like a tiny like student talent show, and he turned it into like the kids doing magic at Rockefeller Center for like a sold out crowd. And I was like, yeah, that's fun as hell. Let's do it. Like that's so yeah,
You
I don't know.
almost
Yeah.
like you were putting on like almost like I want to make it easier for you, and he's like, dude, the other hand goes off. I'm going
Yeah,
full
yeah,
out.
100%, 100%.
That's so cool because like even as you were describing that one panel, like I remember reading, I'm like, I don't remember the panel of 4 card. I'm like, but I remember then like when it was changed of kicking it open,
Yeah.
the blood, like it looks so good. If someone hasn't gotten to read issue 1 of You'll Do Bad Things, what's the elevator pitch for them?
So I do my my short like Hollywood answer is it's a Death Note by way of Dario Argento. It's a it's a for true crime fans, for slasher fans, for fans
Mhm.
of giallo. It's a send up of that. But yeah, it's about a writer, a former true crime writer who had a big smash hit of a book chronicling the nursery rhyme killer. And 10 years have passed since the debut of that, and he's decided he no longer wants to work in that genre. He finds it icky, the standing on the shoulders of dead children, the morality of it doesn't like.
Yeah.
So he decides he wants to write a romance story. But every time he sits down to write it, he ends up killing his characters, and worse yet, those deaths start happening in real life. And it's fun because the first issues come out, and we've had a great response to it. But it is a thing where I'm happy for that because I was really nervous about the first issue because I feel like we don't really show our hand of what the book's going to fully turn into. And initially I was sort of talking with Image. I was like, what if we take the first 2 issues and we put them together and we put them out that way? And they're like, you're fine, just put out the first issue. But I'm excited for the second issue to come out, and I feel like you kind of start to get the full scope
Yeah.
of what it's going to be. And then for the next 4 issues, it's kind of off to the races. We're going to be, it gets weird.
Yeah, it doesn't slow down like getting the check out the other. So we'll stick on issue 1, but
Mhm.
you're not lying when it says like you get to see where it's going, and then like it's it's full on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so like for you as a creator, right? You've done so much of these world buildings. Where did the kind of like, especially something like You'll Do Bad Things, where do like your ideas originate? Is it something like you just come like this is this might be a good idea, and I'm gonna then expand on it later, or was it like instantly, when an idea pops up, like this is it?
It's a little bit all of that, right? Where
Okay.
there'll be a thing where it's like you'll have an idea and you'll be like, oh man, that's such a great idea. I'm going to notebook that. I'm going to hold it. I don't know when I'm going to use it, but like that's a thing that like when I get the opportunity, I want to come back to. Bad Things specifically was born of I truly did want to write a romance comic. I was like trying to figure out how
Mm.
to do that in a way that I thought would be compelling and interesting. And, I hate it's an unfortunate thing sometimes we have to think about as creators, but like, how am I going to sell a romance comic in the current landscape of what it is? Um, and so, obviously, Tom King and Elsa Cartier with, Love Everlasting showed a brilliant way to do that.
Right.
But I didn't super feel like I knew how to do it yet. And so I started writing the book, and you kind of see it in the opening issue where we're using thought balloons and we're doing like this date thing where it's like we're really trying to harken back to it. And then it turns on its head and becomes, a slasher comic, which is much like what's kind of going on with the main character of the book. And so that was kind of a funny thing where it was like the initial intent fed what the creator or the character is doing, which
Yeah.
feeds into, and it's sort of a whatever. But then, like for instance, at the same time, the book was me and Matthew Rosenberg were driving down to a comic shop to do a signing with Joshua Hickson, who's an artist on The Deviant
Yep.
and Shanghai Red and The Plot. And we were pitching, we were going to do a book with Josh because we had done an issue of Furthest Place with him. I went to school with Josh, and I always loved his work, and we wanted some kind of opportunity to work together. So me and Matt are driving down, and we're just pitching Josh on different ideas that me and Matt both separately came up with, and we were like, best idea wins. And I pitched Bad Things in that moment to Josh, and Matthew pitched a different book. This was like the sort of final bracket. I guess we're out of March Madness, but that would be like the whatever. Um, and Hickson picked Matt's pitch over mine, so I went, okay, I'll prove that you should have picked mine out of spite. So, but the other one with Josh, that's like one where Matt had this idea. Now it's sort of morphed into this completely different thing, where it's like a mall murder whodunit thing. I don't. It's weird. um, but it's sort of funny where it's like you have things like that where like that one's sort of amorphous and it sort of congeals as three people, the creators sort of come up with it together. For
Mm.
instance, like me and Matt had because it's a murder mystery. Not to talk too much about a book that is not going to come out for 2 years, but like the when you do a mystery like that, it's got to be really, really tight, right? Because you
Yeah.
want readers to like be able to go back to issue one and be like, oh shit, they seeded this, they
Right.
set this up. But so we've done that. Like we have the whole thing broken down to where everything needs to be, and we sent Josh these like pretty detailed character descriptions for everybody, and for what they physically appeared like. And then recently he just sent us back, sketches for what every single person in this thing is going to look like. And he's taken it in this, with a lot of them in a totally different direction than what we imagined. And that's so exciting because it's a thing where it's like, to watch his gears turn on a thing. And it's this sort of thing where it's like in these projects, it really, if you allow it to be that collaborative nature, like you get so much cooler and crazier stuff than like you would if you were just doing it by yourself.
Yeah. Well, I love that. How much of it, how much of your like being an artist infiltrates into like the style of book you want? Like with You'll Do Bad Things. Like I'm just looking at these pages, like, and the artwork's fantastic, but then like the coloring aspect, even of like the tone that you want to set, like, do you kind of start out with a leeway of what you're envisioning and then you just let the creators go with it? Or how much of a collaboration is that?
Yeah, I mean the for Bad Things, Adriano's stuff. I originally thought I was going to draw Bad Things myself eventually,
Okay.
and then one day I was like, people were doing like portfolio shares. I think Michael Walsh shared Adriano's portfolio on like an Instagram story, and I was like, oh shit, like light bulb,
Yeah.
lightning strike moment. That's what the book needs to look like. Um, and so Adriano's inking style and the way he pencils and all that stuff fit perfectly in with the um subject matter of the book. But then when he came back with those colors, like it's the thing we were talking about, like vibe wise.
Yeah.
And it was funny at first. He's like, I think I want to color myself. And I was like, you're really young and you've never drawn a book. I don't know if you should color yourself. I was like, let's try and he wanted to letter it himself. He wanted to do everything. And I was like, let's try and take as much off your plate as possible so you can just focus on the penciling. And he's like, no, I'm coloring it. I'm doing it. And thank God, because like he nailed it. It was a thing where it's like I sort of described what I thought it should look like, and
Mhm.
then he came back with it just immediately, perfect, crystallized, knew
Yeah.
exactly what it was. Like, so I don't know. He's such an incredible artist, and I'm so excited that he's finally getting to have his work out there. Um, just like the knowing the process of like, I can't imagine drawing 50 pages of a thing and it's just no one's ever going to see it. So the
Yeah.
fact that he's finally now getting to have his thing out there, I don't know, it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and it looks great. Like there's moments of like, in that first issue, like where it's almost behind like the blind kind of aspects of like
Mm,
as the girl like can creep, like it gives like this creepy vibe too, but it just there's such a color palette there too that just it flows really nicely. And so like compare that then with the story that you're crafting of like this kind of what's gonna happen to, as this writer, it just merges together beautifully.
thanks, Greg. Yeah, that's the hope. It's a bit, yeah, I don't know. It's that other thing too, where it's like the book would be totally different with a different artist. So it's cool to see, yeah, just how it all matches up and stuff like that.
How do you then, as an artist, decide like, because you said you were potentially going to do the artwork for this original, like you were thinking you might do this. Where do you kind of decide like maybe this isn't the project for my art, and that this is where I should focus more on the writing? How do you
For
kind of
sure. I mean,
discern?
if you look at the covers, that is kind of so I'd like the cover style, how I drew is kind of how the book I thought would look when I was doing it. And I think, if it was me, I don't think it would be such a different book. Like
Yeah.
it wouldn't be what it is. And I'm so happy that it is what it is. Like if it was me doing it, it's that thing I go through, um, given that layup page to Adriano, like that's what I would have done. It would have been that's how it would have been a much quieter, sort of subdued comic. And I think Adriano bringing his wanting to be like, nope, we need to turn it up here. Like, no, we need to turn it down here, and that sort of sensibility, like it is what makes me feel comfortable even saying like it is a giallo book. Like it's a thing where it's like if you watch those movies, my sensibility probably wouldn't have. People would have been like, I don't know if this is really a giallo, but the way that Adriano brings um, this sort of like urgency to certain things, and then making the scene of the magic trick larger than life and
Mhm.
different things like that, where it's like, yeah, this is a little surreal. This is a little Lynchian in the way that it's like kind of out there, but then also like because it's a little bombastic, we believe the world. While also like you want to toe that line of still caring about um, the violence that is happening. Like the violence should feel shocking as opposed to just violence for violence sake. And so I don't know, with Adrian, he toes that line perfectly of having it be bombastic and silly, like you kind of winking at the audience while also being like, oh, this is supposed to be kind of gruesome and shocking.
Yeah, and there are.
Yeah,
So, how many issues is this set for?
six.
Six. Okay. So is this? I know it's always one of those like when you have an idea like what's the furthest place from here? Like it seems something like it's a world that you can expand forever. Like how do you approach that with ideas? Are there certain ones where like this is gonna be six with the possibility how it does of you could tell more, or you're like this is just straight up six? Like how do you kind of determine what the length of a story is gonna be? Obviously without knowing sales and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, like Four Kids, Bad Things, another book I did called Dead Dogs Bite. Those ones are ones where you know what the story is, and in
Mhm.
that story you're like, oh, this is 6 issues, this is 5 issues, this is 4 issues. Like the story sort of dictates the space of
Okay.
that. Whereas like Furthest Place, the idea with that was, I'm sorry, my cat's going nuts on the couch. The the intent with that one always was to be like this is a big epic journey, like road trip story, and that one actually ended up being like we thought it was only going to be 3 volumes long, and then in working on it, it's a thing where it's like, oh nope, now it's six. Like it's doubled in size. Like, and that's just the nature of like working on it. And that one was sort of intentionally set up that way. Like
Okay.
Four Kids and the new one that me and Matt are doing, and Bad Things, like they're structured in such a way that it is like curtain comes up, you meet the character, curtain comes down, character's changed. That's what it is. Whereas Furthest Place, yeah, being that big journey, you kind of have to set the pieces up, and you kind of know where you're gonna end up with them. Like we've known the end since we've started, but the journey to there, you're like, well, I guess we're turning left here, or I guess we're turning right. Like, and the characters, it sounds. I told this story recently at a. We were on a sign tour, and somebody asked the same, where it's like, where do you get your ideas from, or how do you,
Yeah.
write your characters? And I remember being at a convention years ago, and it's like a Jaime Hernandez panel, and Jaime's talking about his characters in Love and Rockets, Hopi and Maggie, and like how he, has taken them on this journey through years and years and years. And he's like, well, the stories, like, they talk to me, like they tell me kind of where they want to go. And I was like, that's a cute thing to say, but like, come on, Jaime, that's horseshit. And then I started working on the things, or on this thing, and it is a thing where it's like, oh no, like if you really do start to hear your characters, and they start to like, you'd be like, oh no, they wouldn't do that, or they would do this, and it's a sort of really interesting thing where if you invest in them and you take that time, like they kind of start to tell you what the story is. I don't know, it's kind of a head trip.
Yeah. Well, I'm here for it. So, well, Tyler, I want to respect your time. I feel like I could talk to you forever about comics. I've been a big fan of your work for a long time. Is there anything I know, right now you'll do bad things. What's furthest place from here? Like, is there other stuff that anything else that you wanted to hit on that we haven't touched yet that you want to promote?
No, yeah, if issue You'll Do Bad Things #1 is in shops now. Issue 2 will be out at the end of April, last week of April. Pick up Four Kids Walk Into a Bank, or What's the Furthest Place from Here, or Dead Dogs Bite. And
So good.
yeah, check out those comics. Or, I'll plug somebody else's book. Pick up Precious Metals by Ian Bertram and Darcy Vaughn. Don't know how to pronounce your last name,
Monkeys.
Darcy. Thank you.
I only know that, and I only know that because I've had Darcy on the show multiple times talking about precious metal. So it's so
uh,
good.
yeah, pick up that. I know the trade for that's coming out soon. So pick up that. What else came out from Image this week? Golden Rage. How about that? Golden Rage
Yeah,
#1.
there we go. Yeah, those great picks. Great picks. Well, where can people follow along with you? Stay up to date with, what you're working on, and if they want to follow on.
Oh yeah, sure. You can follow me on Instagram or on BlueSky. Both are Tyler Patrick Boss.
Perfect. Tyler, thank you so much just for taking some time to talk about comics with me. Like we said, go out, buy Tyler's books if you haven't, but definitely be going picking up You'll Do Bad Things from Image. So good. Artwork. If this interview didn't sell you on picking up just for the art and story alone, I don't know what to tell you because it was. But thank you so much. And with that being said, hopefully you can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out.